For the first time in decades, The Mummy might actually look like a horror movie again. Huzzah! After years of action-adventure reboots, a failed cinematic universe, and a rare Tom Cruise L, Lee Cronin's The Mummy finally received its first trailer after plenty of speculation in the horror community about what exactly it was going to look like. And boy howdy, this ain't some superhero origin story. No siree. It's looking grim, nasty, and unlike anything we've seen before from this very specific subgenre. The director already pleased audiences with his excellent Evil Dead Rise, and so it's no surprise that there's been some high expectations, as well as some interesting leaks from test screenings that suggest something both grisly and divisive. So, let's delve into the 2026 Mummy flick and answer why it looks like real horror once again. First up, let's talk about this teaser trailer, because it's already feeling like a proper horror show. In addition to some creepy garbled message that sounds like it's coming from an old school radio, the teaser gives us a series of equally creepy imagery, including a scorpion crawling out of a person's mouth, which I'll get back to that in a few minutes. Scrubbing through the video, there's also what appears to be a hidden pyramid, bandages covered in runes, a woman bleeding out on the floor, different bandages being peeled off like necrotic flesh, a figure running across a dark hallway, a person seemingly being tossed through a glass window via supernatural means, and even what appears to be a sandstorm. All before asking us the question, what happened to Katie? Obviously, this isn't answered in the trailer, it's part of the promotion, but we do end with a shot of Katie's apparently mummified body waking up and letting loose yet another creepy crawly before the teaser cuts to the title screen, which sports Lee Cronin's name above the title, presumably to differentiate this mummy from those that came before. Now, it's important to frame up exactly how we got here. It really shouldn't be too wild that a mummy movie looks like a horror flick, but sure enough, history has taught us that it's not always the case. In fact, we haven't had a proper mummy-based horror flick, I think, since Blood from the Mummy's Tomb from 1971, at least not a film made by a major studio. And oddly enough, Blood from the Mummy's Tomb also features a young girl as a major element in its plot, which is interesting. I just thought about that. So it's not part of this video, though, but that's something to look into. And we haven't gotten one from an American studio since 1944's The Mummy's Curse. That was a Universal picture, and if you don't remember that one, have no fear, it's not very good. That was followed up by Abbott and Costello Meet the Mummy in 1955, and then, as I mentioned, British studio Hammer, most notable perhaps for their Dracula series, produced their own mostly well-received mummy films from 1959 until, again, 1971, with Dracula himself, Christopher Lee, as the titular monster in that 1959 film. From there, the series lay dormant until 1999 with the release of Stephen Sommers' The Mummy, which took the horror and dialed it down while amplifying the adventure and comedy elements. This is the one you've probably all seen, with Brendan Fraser leading a delightfully sexy cast that also includes Rachel Weisz and Arnold Vosloo, with John Hannah as the primary comedic relief and brother-in-law to Fraser's character. The 99 Mummy was a massive blockbuster, resulting in 2 sequels, one of which was even well received, as well as a spin-off series in the form of the Scorpion King franchise, plus a bunch of video games and even a cartoon series that ran for 2 seasons on Kids WB. Remember the WB? They had a frog as their mascot. It was a great time to be alive. Anyway, the Fraser series eventually fizzled out with the 3rd entry, Tomb of the Dragon Emperor, which eventually led to a reboot in 2017. That film starred Tom Cruise and was meant to be the start of a massive new franchise known as the Dark Universe. Get it? Because Universal Studios. It's a dark universe. It's got monsters. You get it. Unfortunately, or fortunately, depending on where you stand, the Dark Universe never quite got off the ground. There was casting for the other monsters, which included Javier Bardem and Johnny Depp, but The Mummy sunk hard at the box office and was very much panned by critics. Turns out the real horror was making a middling action flick. And therein lay one of the biggest issues with the 2017 film. It wasn't a horror movie, perhaps even less than its immediate predecessors. It was more of a superhero origin story for Tom Cruise's character who, spoilers for this movie you didn't like, winds up becoming immortal at the end of the film. So this leads us to Lee Cronin's The Mummy, which is produced by New Line Cinema and Blumhouse, with distribution from New Line parent company and future Netflix subsidiary Warner Brothers. So first thing to note here is that no, this is not a Universal picture, meaning we're probably not going to get the continuing adventures of Imhotep. The film follows, quote, the young daughter of a journalist who disappears without a trace in the desert. The shattered family is stunned when the girl suddenly reappears 8 years later, but what should have been a joyful reunion quickly turns into a true nightmare. So yeah, pretty different from earlier iterations. Except for Blood from the Mummy's Tomb. There's gonna be one guy in the audience who's seen Blood from the Mummy's Tomb, and he's gonna be so mad at me. One thing that's particularly interesting this time around comes from a series of test screenings, which make the film sound like a mix of absolutely awful and delightfully unhinged. The Mummy reportedly comes in at 2 hours in length and features a, quote, truly vile scene in which a scorpion crawls into a character's mouth and severs their vocal cords, leading to another character sticking their fingers down the victim's throat and pressing on their vocal cords, thereby somehow allowing them to speak. It's a pretty out there description, to the point I find it hard to believe it doesn't actually happen in the finished film. After all, who could make up something so outlandish? Plus, in that teaser, it has the scorpion crawling out of the person's mouth. It seems like it's in there. I guess, to answer the question of who could make up something so outlandish, Lee Cronin did write the script, so Lee Cronin. The awful aspect, by the way, is a little dubious. Basically, there were reports that the film was so bad that producer James Wan walked out of a test screening. This has been denied by representatives for Warner Brothers, which I would deny it too. And honestly though, I believe them, but it's worth mentioning anyway. It was also reported that the film was being retitled The Resurrected, but obviously per the trailer that's not the case. It is indeed named The Mummy, or Lee Cronin's The Mummy, further suggesting that the reports of its low quality are probably being overblown. Cronin, for his part, has said in a talk with IGN that, quote, this is a very different kind of mummy movie. He went on to say that, quote, it's an insane mashup to suggest, but this film is almost 1 part Poltergeist and 1 part Se7en, but put through my lens and the way that I like to entertain people. From the same interview, we also learn that the film is about family, just like the rest of Cronin's small filmography, and that the lore within the film will have some authenticity, though he stresses that he's not making a thesis. Part of that more liberal approach to the mythology includes making the titular mummy an everyday person, in this case a child, and asking, what if that person was needed for something else? It's an intriguing premise, no doubt about it, and you can see between the trailer and Lee Cronin's comments that this is going to take its genre bona fides very seriously. This isn't an adventure comedy, nor is it about a lumbering cipher like the later Universal and Hammer stories. This is something new and potentially something very fresh that we haven't seen before from this loosely connected sort of franchise. At the same time, Cronin is taking things back to their roots. I'm definitely not going to suggest that the OG Mummy flicks from Universal and Hammer weren't proper horror movies, and it seems from interviews that Cronin is honoring that legacy. Oh, and real quick, a brief note on the F-word, franchisability. Cronin has stated that there is a potential for sequels to this iteration of The Mummy. He said in the aforementioned interview that the film is, quote, about a curse, and that there's also the ripples that could go forward from what characters experience, and there is a bigger universe there in the background. For those of you hoping for a new, successful horror franchise, and particularly one focused on a classic monster, this could be phenomenal news. So yeah, we're definitely dealing with a proper horror flick this go-around in the wide-ranging subgenre of mummy flicks. Considering how long it's been since we got a decently budgeted mummy story that actually felt like true horror, this feels like a fresh and welcome change of pace. But what of the audience? Will the film, which releases in April, be what the populace wants, or will it go the way of Blumhouse's other stab at Universal's catalog, The Wolfman, and just sorta disappear into the sands of time? That's the real question, and one I'd like to see an answer to in the comments. Are you excited for Lee Cronin's The Mummy to bring horror back to the world of bandaged nightmares, or would you rather be seeing Brendan Fraser battle it out alongside abominable snowmen while delivering spicy quips? Let me know what you think, and until next time, thank you for watching ScreenRant.